The Bengals are traveling to the Big Easy. Will they have their full complement of weapons? Let's break down this week's matchup.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien, on his way to New Orleans as we get ready for this Week 6 matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals in New Orleans with the New Orleans Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals. You can find us free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate everyone who subscribes, who follows, and who makes us your first listen. And if you didn't get the crossover yesterday and you want more updates on what's going on with the Saints, they have a laundry list of injuries. Andy Dalton might be playing quarterback. Jameis Winston has been limited in practice twice this week. Go check out Ross Jackson at Locked On Saints for all of the latest updates on what's going on with the Saints and what the Saints think they're going to have to do to beat the Bengals. Whereas on this show today, James, we're going to talk about what the Bengals will have to do to beat the Saints. And part of that starts with who they have available to them as they're still dealing with injuries. Jonah Williams, Tee Higgins, not back at practice on Thursday as Zach Taylor tries to manage their work and manage their health, as they both, I think, there's some hope that they're going to play, but they might not practice on their way to doing so.
Yeah, I watched both of them go through rehab work on the Bengals rehab field on Thursday. They were doing some band work. Tee Higgins did some sprints. Jonah Williams went through some different things. So I still think there's hope here. And one thing I made perfectly clear and wanted to make sure with Zach Taylor, are you willing to play Jonah Williams even if he can't practice all week? And so I think they're going to hold out hope all the way until Sunday for both of these guys. And I watched Tee Higgins go through some sprints. And when you sprain your ankle, it isn't necessarily the straight line. It's the lateral stuff, planning, cutting, stopping, starting. And so we'll see. I didn't see him do any of that. Why would you? Maybe he won't do it until Sunday and they'll test it and go from there. And he was doing those sprints to keep his wind up. So we'll see on both guys. I wouldn't rule them out by any stretch, but it is unfortunate that they didn't get in any kind of limited participation or anything like that. But could be by design. I'm still holding out hope that both guys can suit up on Sunday.
My hope for T is that it is just that he needed more time, that it wasn't a re-aggravation or re-injury on
Maybe he just
Sunday
wasn't ready.
Night.
Yeah,
That's the hope, right? He just needed a little bit more time. Sprained ankles. Most of us have had sprained ankles that have played sports. I think that's got to be the most common injury out there, right? I've done it to my left ankle 100 times. And sometimes I'm walking the next day. Sometimes I'm running 2 days later. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks when they're really bad. So hopefully this is on the scale of T just getting back out there. It is hard to sprint though. Like actually full on sprinting when you have a bad ankle, it doesn't feel great. So I'm taking that as a good sign as well.
for sure. And, it's two huge pieces, right? I mean, Jonah, say what you want about him, but the drop-off is very real. And I think with this entire starting offensive line, it's top-heavy. You might not love their five, but you get past the five and you make a face. And I'm not knocking the backups, but it's just, to me, there's a pretty big drop-off from Jonah Williams and whoever they would start at left tackle. I think it would be Akeem Adeniji. So, hopefully these guys can get healthy. And you're right. Ross Jackson will cover the Saints side, but the Saints are going to be shorthanded. Some of these guys aren't going to play. And look, regardless of whether or not T plays, that's no excuse for this Bengals offense to not be better. They have to be better this week. It doesn't matter. I know it's a reason, and I know not having Jonah would be a reason, but it also would feel like an excuse when you start 2-3 and you're playing a team that gave up 32 points to who? The Seattle Seahawks. And I know they're playing well. I know it's your boy Geno Smith.
You keep talking smack about the Seattle Seahawks, James, and all they do is play offense. All they do is offense. They can't play defense, so they score a lot of points.
Russell Wilson leaves and suddenly they can score. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Geno Smith, he is
Let
the
Geno
truth.
cook.
Absolutely. The throws that he is making this year are ridiculous. Like his highlight reel is Mahomesian. Anyway, we're not talking about the Seahawks. Bengals don't even play the Seahawks.
Hold on.
This year. It is his highlight reel throws this year are insane. Go look at him. Go look at him.
You don't think I've watched some Seattle? I just mentioned the 39-32 game. Watch those.
I'm just saying.
Watch that game. I'm
not saying his tape is Mahomes. I'm saying his highlights are.
They wrote me off. I ain't right back though. I watched that game. I mean, that's look, good for him. I don't care. It's Joe Burrow. It's time to get it done now, and it's time to get it done in the place where 3 years ago you got it done and you won the biggest game of your life.
Yeah, and Joe does need to play
less than 3 years ago, by the way, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, he needs to play better. Hopefully, this is a week when he can do that. The corners for the Saints, even if Marshawn Lattimore does play, leave something to be desired this year. So there is an opportunity. And if they get those man opportunities again this week, which I just saw a great tweet about this, actually. The Bengals are facing like 29% man coverage this year. And the only team to really break that trend so far was the Jets in week 4. No, sorry, Miami in week 4, not the Jets, but it was week 4. And that's the game that I feel like the Bengals had the most downfield success. The Saints, a team that could give the Bengals similar opportunities, even if Marshawn Lattimore is playing. You like those chances, and it'll be interesting to see how they shake things up on the defensive side if Lattimore doesn't go. But where Burrow has excelled is giving his guys accurate, good chances to catch the football in man situations. They haven't seen a lot of man this year. And there's an opportunity this week for Burrow to get back on track. But, when we were talking to Ross yesterday, he's talking about this for the Saints with the injuries they have starts up front. They have solid linebackers, a really good linebacker in DeMario Davis and a solid linebacker working with him in Pete Werner. But Cam Jordan, La'el Collins, Marcus Davenport, Jonah Williams, or whoever's playing left tackle, those are the matchups that could be game-wrecking. And that sort of thing that you would have to worry about, because there should be ways to find matchups you like in this secondary. We've seen this team historically find ways to pick on corners that they think they have outmatched. And this looks like one of those weeks where, they can pick on Paulson Adebo, or they can pick on Bradley Roby or whoever it is out there and find ways to get matchups they like.
I hope, that's the hope. And that's the bar. That's the expectation. I know Jamar Chase is a freak. You don't got to tell me. And 83, let's get him involved some, right? And it's killing me. I don't know. You just look at his numbers, 15 receptions, 15. Yeah. With Higgins missing pieces of 3 different games now, and basically a full game this past week when they needed offense against the divisional opponent, it's time to get it going. It's time now. And look, they're taking some heat, fine. But they can dig themselves out of this hole pretty easily if you go down to New Orleans and get a win. And I think it really does start on offense. And to me, they've talked about starting in quick starts and starting fast. I think this offense needs that, because if they'd start slow and that Superdome crowd gets into it and they're going crazy and they have communication errors and Akeem Adeniji or 75% Jonah Williams false starts and backs them up, and now it's 1st and 15, and it can compound. So a big play early would be nice, maybe to Jamar Chase, because Chase is going to have, so he bought 15 tickets, and then apparently there's 50 more, his dad told Fox 19 at least, and they're trying to get a hold of more. So that's it's kind of wild. A lot of Jamar Chase supporters going to be in the stands on Sunday.
And I'm really excited to see what this offense does this week. I've been excited every week, even though it's been rough. I'm excited to see what they try, right? Because they have tried different things every week, and I'm excited to see what kind of coverages they get and how they attack those coverages. Do we see more of what we talked about with Mike in our film review episode, more of those middle of field levels kind of concepts where it's a high-low over the middle of the field if they're getting those middle of the field open concepts? Are they doing things to hold the hook curl linebackers? They're not dropping back into the dig window on Dagger where Joe Burrow was intercepted on that pass for Jamar Chase. And so those things are going to be really interesting. In the run game, I think, very important. Can they continue to find success in some form of the run game, even if that is living out of the shotgun, which they did against Baltimore? That is a huge key, I think, in getting this offense to be more consistent. So more matchups we can talk about in this one, including that run game and including some of the things on the other side of the ball coming up next.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster, and it's free. You don't want to have to sift through way too many resumes and people that you're not necessarily looking for because of qualifications or experience or just the right candidate. And LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you do that with simple tools, screening questions that make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can prioritize and hire quickly. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Before we dive into this running game, and I know people hate this, by the way. People like cover two isn't new. You go read Bengals fans, wherever they have an outlet right now, social media, Reddit, whatever. Cover two isn't new. This isn't the only team struggling to beat cover two, but you look around the league, and the entire league has much, much worse productivity and efficiency against too high defenses, except for a few teams that run the ball really well. Detroit, Cleveland, when they get those too high looks. So the running game is really important. The other thing that I think is interesting is people are like circulating the Jamar Chase route chart right now. Chris Sims, Chris Sims, the younger Sims, jumped on that again and said, this isn't acceptable. You go back to week one, Jamar Chase's route chart looks just like Justin Jefferson's. They're just trying different things each week with these guys. Man, is it open season on this offense. And, some of the suggestions, they're kind of funny because they're things that the team is already doing. They're things the team has tried. They're like, anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the downside to having expectations and underperforming. And so that's just, it comes along with it. And not everything's going to be right. Not all of the criticisms are going to be accurate. And not all of them are going to be fair. And that's just welcome to life in the NFL as what it's like to be a Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs went through this last year. They started 2-3. And so that's where the Bengals are, but with even less of a track record than that Chiefs team had, of course. So they have to right the ship. Everything can be okay. Everything can be relaxed, like Joe Burrow said when they were 0-2. But they have to turn the corner now. They can't wait 3 weeks to turn the corner because I think they're going to. Just got to get it done soon.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it is just people are going to find things, right? People are going to talk until the offense is right. And I think that's fair. The offense needs to be better. And even when the Chiefs were struggling, it didn't look quite like this. Like that included a 1.36-35 loss to the Ravens in week 2. And, it included a 38-20 loss, which isn't so good, to Buffalo in week 5, who they play again this week, by the way, Kansas City, Buffalo this week. That should be a fun game. But going back to the running game, that's one of the answers to too high. And so if the Saints do a lot of that again, and either way, regardless of what the Saints do on defense, the Bengals need to find a way to run the ball like they did last week. And I'm not talking the first 4 drives of last week when they ran a couple of crack blocks with their wide receivers on defensive ends that people have criticized as well. And maybe they should be using tight ends in that spot instead. But finding ways to consistently run the ball will unlock this offense. It will help. You can't be averaging 2 yards a carry and be like, where's the explosive plays? Because if you're averaging 2 yards a carry, teams are going to play defense against you like Baltimore did, and they're going to sink their safeties and linebackers 25, 15 yards off the ball at the snap. You're not going to be able to go over the top on that. The whole shots are not going to exist on the sidelines. And so the running game, very important, would like to see that continue this week, and I think is one of the ways the Bengals can help themselves win this game.
For sure, especially early. If you get it going, I think momentum is such a thing, especially when you're struggling. And they feel it. They feel the pressure, and they have urgency. And, you don't want to go out there and press. But I think if you go out there and you have success early, it's just going to open things up for them mentally. Just a little bit. You have some success, and it really helps. after struggling a bit. And this offense has struggled. And so what better way, by the way, to help Joe Burrow from an accuracy standpoint than to get the ground game going early so he doesn't feel, all right, this is going to have to be a game where I have to go out and throw it all over the field and potentially push the ball, all of those things. So, yeah, they showed flashes of it last week. It was nice to see Joe Mixon, a little burst from him. And so hopefully that can continue because, man, this offense should be fun, Jake. And I love offense. And it's just not fun right now. It's not. And it's not like it's – last year there were quarters or halves where it wasn't fun. It's been games. Like full-on game. It wasn't really that fun at all last week, even when they did well, even when they tied it at 10, even when they drove downfield and took the lead. It was good. It was good to see. It wasn't necessarily fun. And dump-offs can be fun if you get the ball to Mixon in space or get the ball to Chase in space. Chase in space. It's a lot of fun to say. I said it a lot last year. Hopefully we see it a lot on Sunday.
Yeah, and sometimes it has to look like that is the one thing I would say. If teams are that dedicated to not letting you catch the ball behind them, then it might have to look like that for a little bit until you prove that you're patient enough. I was watching Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson on the PFF football podcast today, NFL podcast today, and Sam's talking about, you know what it is about cover two and these two high defenses, cover 6, cover 4, quarters, man match quarters, whatever it is. It's that quarterbacks the only quarterback, Sam was saying, that has the patience to consistently beat that in the last 20 years is Tom Brady. Even Peyton Manning, when he's seeing these two high shells, he's going to get antsy. 20 shots, 20 plays into the game, 25 plays into the game, and he hasn't thrown downfield yet. And now he's going to get antsy. He's going to try to take a seam shot. He's going to try to fit one in, in the hole of cover 2 on the sideline or something like that. But Brady, if you tell Brady, he's going to have to throw nothing you throw this game is going to be more than 12 yards downfield. Brady's going to be like, okay. And he's going to do a really good job of that. And they're going to win that game. And so that's perhaps a lesson this offense has to learn. If you're not going to get teams out of their insistence on not being beat over the top, then you have to look like that for some period of time to open up some of those explosives. So, if that's what the Saints do at the beginning of the game, the Bengals need to be ready to play that kind of offense and open those opportunities up. Meanwhile, the Saints offense, to me, a bit of a mystery going into this game, right? Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, who's going to play, who's going to be in the wide receiving room for the Saints this weekend, who's going to be active at that position with all the injuries they have there. Will Trey Hendrickson and James Hurst going at it on that side of the offense be a fun matchup to watch? Will we see Joseph Osai start to get things going? A lot of fun things on that side of the ball as well. And, we haven't even mentioned the Bengals offensive line. I don't know if we'll even have time to, but certainly something that we're watching. It doesn't even have to be said every week. So we'll get into some of these defensive matchups for the Bengals coming up next.
BetOnline is your number one source for all things football betting this season, whether it's college, whether it's the NFL. You want the latest matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. Well, BetOnline is the spot that you can wager on all these games, including the Bengals. They're road favorites. Are they going to be able to get it done and improve to 3-0 or 3-3? 3-0. Wishful thinking, Jake. 3-3. We'll see, but you can wager on that at BetOnline. If you want to wager on Joe Burrow leading this team to an AFC North title for a second straight year, you can do that and so much more. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball and the playoffs, NBA, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I don't feel like I really have a feel for this Saints offense, James. There's names that I know. I don't know which of them are playing, but Taysom Hill, is that the scariest part of this offense? Chris Olave coming off the concussion looks like he's going to play. He stepped up his practice participation on Thursday, so he seems to be on the right track to play. Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle, we've talked about. He's really good. Alvin Kamara, we talked about with Ross yesterday. He's really good. And earlier this week, Adam Schefter said Mike Thomas is expected to play, but he hasn't practiced all week. So has that changed? I don't know. What are your expectations for the Saints offense this week, James? Because I got to tell you, I do not really know how to think about them right now.
I sort of feel like it's going to be the Alvin Kamara show and they're going to try to run everything through him. And it does depend, because if you have Chris Olave and you have Mike Thomas, that it changes things some and changes things a lot. And, if you said, oh, well, 1 through 3, you have Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Chris Olave. That's a heck of a 1 through 3 on paper. It's pretty solid, right? I like Olave a lot. And that's someone I feel like he's going to play after practicing in a limited capacity on Thursday. We'll see if he does. But yeah, I think that this Saints offense, there's a lot of question marks. Part of it's injury. Part of it's the quarterback. I mean, I asked Chidobe Awuzie on Thursday, what are the differences between a Saints offense ran by Winston and a Saints offense ran by Andy Dalton? And he was teammates with Andy Dalton for a year in Dallas. And he was like, how do I phrase this without getting in trouble? He thought about it for a second. And you know what he said? It's the same offense. He copped out. So clearly there's differences that they're seeing. And naturally, it's simple, right? Jameis Winston takes chances, and he's got a higher ceiling, but there's the higher variance and the lower floor. I think that's probably it, where Andy Dalton's going to be a little more, I'm willing to get the ball out of my hands quick and not hold on to it. So I don't really know what to expect from the Saints offense. Depends on who's at quarterback. I think that changes things a bit, and it's certainly going to be injury dependent as well at that wide receiver spot, because they have some good receivers. And as of now, it feels like just Olave is going to play. But it wouldn't shock me if 2 of the 3 play.
Yeah, and I think they've protected Andy Dalton in that offense a little bit. Just look at, they had a crazy high-scoring game against Seattle, right? But that's Taysom Hill doing weird Taysom Hill things in one of his 2 Taysom Hill games this year. But Andy Dalton only threw 24 passes in that game. He completed 16 of them for a respectable 8 yards an attempt. He threw 1 interception. He's had a couple turnover-worthy plays in his couple of games that he's played. But we kind of know, we've seen a lot of Andy Dalton, right? We know who he is. They're going to protect him. They're not going to make him beat you. But if he does take care of the football, he can do that. He can run an offense. We've seen him do it before, and he's 2-0 against Joe Burrow. So how do you get Andy Dalton off his game? Well, think back to when Andy Dalton was a quarterback in Cincinnati, and what's the obvious answer here is you make him get outside of the structure of the offense. You either change the picture on him, you make him hesitate, you make him take that extra beat, you throw off his timing. The Bengals have been great at rotations, doing weird stuff, dropping out of mugged looks into weird coverages, doing some cool inversions, doing some cool rotations, or you get pressure. Trey Hendrickson and James Hurst in this game at left tackle for the New Orleans Saints. If I just told you those names, you probably think, oh yeah, advantage Trey. Who's James Hurst? That's not Terran Armstead.
He's got a great first name. Not
does.
A bad last name either, Hayden. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, sure. James Hurst has actually been really good as a pass blocker this year. He's not giving up a whole lot in the way of pressure. So that could be a fun little matchup on the left side of the Saints offense. Meanwhile, Sam Hubbard, we've talked about how good of a season he's having. That'll be a little bit tougher. Ryan Ramczyk on the other side, we know how good he is. We coveted him when he was potentially available last offseason. The Bengals needed a tackle. It was a long shot, but he was potentially out there. A good blocker. So if they're trying to get the run game going without DJ Reader out there again, these guys need to play well. The linebackers need to continue to play well. I thought they played better than the PFF grading indicated they played against the Ravens, but they had trouble with the run game against the Ravens. And if you're looking at a depleted offense without their quarterback in the Saints, that would be the thing that you would be worried about. The Bengals have been great against the pass this year. I've loved Lou Anarumo's designs. I have faith in his ability to disrupt Andy Dalton. But if they can get the running game going and make his life easier, then it gets a little touch and go for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. And the run game, their short passing game to Kamara is an extension of that run game. And so these linebackers are going to get tested. This defensive line is going to get tested. The secondary, and they've done a good job relative overall tackling as a defense, but they're going to get tested as well. And so can you stop Alvin Kamara in space? It's a big question, because they're going to get him in space. And if you're one-on-one with him, can you bring him down? And or if you're in the hole with him, is he going to make you miss or make you look silly? Because he can make any of those guys on the defense look silly. He's obviously talented enough to do that. If they do that, I'm pretty confident that the secondary can handle whatever receivers are out there. there is the variance of Jameis Winston. He could throw 4 picks or 4 touchdowns. Do you want that, or do you want the safe guy in Dalton? Do you want to face the safer guy in Dalton who might not? Yeah, and he's capable of making mistakes too, right? If you get pressure on him. So I think that's the thing. Kamara in space, and then pressure on whoever's playing quarterback. And you could say that every week, but I think it's this week especially, because if Kamara is getting loose in space, what's going to make life easy on Dalton, even if you get some pressure, easy on Winston, even if you get some pressure. But if you take that away and you're heating them up a little bit, I think you're going to come away with a couple turnovers, and which case that could help the offense get off to the fast start, in which case it could lead to the 27-24 Bengals victory that I predicted on our Thursday crossover.
Yeah, there's no crazy speed in this skill group from the Saints either, the way that Miami presented. This isn't a crazy quarterback. Even if it is Jameis Winston, you're still not talking about terribly stiff competition at the quarterback position compared to like Lamar Jackson, who they bottled up the passing game pretty well for the most part against the Ravens, those 2 blown coverages notwithstanding. So some very interesting stuff in this game. We'll be back on Sunday night with your post-game recap. Hopefully the Bengals get to 3-3, and we're talking about Eli Apple revenge game, my favorite storyline here. The much maligned in the eyes of Saints fans, Eli Apple returning to the Superdome. And we'll see how that goes. We're on Eli Apple watch a little bit this week. Until next
Apple
time,
Watch.
Bengals fans. We're not sponsored by them, James.
You said it. I didn't.
I didn't. Did I? I did.
You said Eli Apple Watch.
But then also you. Anyway, let's get out of here. We'll be back after the game. We will we'll get you all your post-game insights and reactions after week 6 here on Locked On Bengals, covering the Cincinnati Bengals every day. Thanks for listening, Bengals fans. Hoo day, and have a good one.